Are you able to hear me, Anamika?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's start. Once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the USA visa counseling session conducted by Shiksha experts. In today's session, we would cover the process of applying for the F1 visa and remove a few misconceptions about the visa interview. In addition, we would cover basic do's and don'ts and also discuss questions sent by you with pointers to guide you on how to best answer those questions. Now, if you talk about the visa interview, one of the most important things that students need to understand is that it is not a very complicated process. In fact, it is one of the simplest process if you get into the nitty-gritties of it. So we would be covering that, and in today's session would be joining me, who my name is Udit Narang, and I've been working in this industry for the last 6 years, and I've helped more than 250 students getting admissions in MBA programs, MS programs, and undergraduate programs in US, and I've successfully helped these students getting, successfully clear their visa as well. And also joining us is Anamika Saxena. She's an expert in MS and MBA admissions and visa counseling and has worked with over 150 students. And she's also been working in this industry for a long time. As mentioned, this session is conducted by Shiksha.com, India's #1 study abroad website. Feel free to visit the website once the session is done for any details regarding the visa guides as well as articles on the visa interview. So the agenda of today's discussion is an introduction to the US visa counseling session and experts, and we would majorly be covering the steps for applying for a visa, the documents that you should carry, some of the things that you need to know, and interview questions and categories, and actual interview, actual question and answers that were shared with you through your responses. Just give us a second. All right. My apologies for the inconvenience in between. So, US continues to be the top choice for students who are planning to study abroad. It's a general notion by many students that US F1 visa process and interview is complicated by nature. However, I assure to most of you after the session, you would know that the process is simple and not time consuming at all. It is worth noting that though the visa interview is an integral part of the US visa process, it is not the lengthiest. In fact, majority of your time would go in applying for the visa, which includes the various steps involved. Some of them which we will be covering during this presentation. That includes filing for your DS-160. It also includes booking a visa appointment and the other things that are involved along the process. Uh, and by the way, the visa interview lasts a maximum of 2 to 3 minutes. So a point which most of you might not know, but according to the visa law, as per the US, any non-immigrant visa applicant who is applying for the F1 visa interview, any non-immigrant applicant means that someone who is applying for the student visa should show intention of coming back. What does that mean? It means that students are supposed to prove themselves during the visa interview that they are not potential immigrants. They have to come back. This is what the visa officer should perceive out of the interview. Some of you might be thinking, we want to go to the US, we want to study, and we want to work. So, how do we counter that? How do we ensure that the visa officer does not consider us as an immigrant despite us wanting to work there after our graduation? So, we would be covering those points along with the presentation and along with the questions that have been sent by you. Now, when you talk about the visa law, it judges students on three major things: social ties to your home country, economic ties to your home country, and professional goals in India. We would be covering each and every point in detail as we move ahead. By the way, remember to book your appointment 120 days prior to the term start date. It would not be possible for you to book an appointment 120 days before your term starts. So majority of your program would be starting in the second week of August, third week of August. So by all means, you should start booking your appointments if you haven't done so. So let's start with the process of applying. Now, as you can see in the slide, we've summed down the entire process into three steps, which includes you to pay your service fees, you to fill the DS-160 form, and book a visa appointment. Just give us a moment, please. I think there's some technical difficulty. You're not able to see the slide. Right. So as far as the service fees is concerned, this is the form I-901, and this is issued by the Department of Homeland Security. This ID is mentioned in your I-20, and it could be found on the top of the page of your I-20. The fees is $200, and it could be paid on fmjfee.com. This is the website where you need to pay your fees, and it's a very simple process if you ask me. Just go to the website, click on the payment button. You have to enter your service ID, name, date of birth, and you can simply make the payment. We highly recommend that you pay this early, though as the process, from the process point of view, from the US visa point of view, you do not, it is not mandatory for you to pay the service fees before you go for the actual interview. So you could even pay that just a couple of days before your actual interview. But we're suggesting you to pay the fees early. There's some reasons behind that. You could receive an admission offer after you've made the after you've made the service payment, and this would save you time when you want to transfer the service fees. There could be many other reasons that could be involved here, which would depend on a case-by-case basis. As per the guidelines by the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for issuing the Form I-901, when your visa is approved, you cannot enter the US 30 days prior to the term start date. So if your term is starting on August 17th, you cannot enter the US before July 17th. That would not be legal. Once the student is in the US, he has to report to the university within 30 days from landing, which means that once you have, once you've entered, if you've entered the US on 1st August, then you have to report to the university maximum by 30th August. If a student does not do so, the Department of Homeland Security can track the student, and that can simply lead to him or her being deported. So it's very important for you to follow this protocol. Otherwise, it could lead to serious immigration problems in the future. Next is filling the DS-160 form. Now, you must remember, as a part of the visa process, the visa application process, DS-160 and SEVIS are the most important during this entire visa process before you go for your actual visa interview. An appointment can be booked without submitting the DS-160 and the SEVIS. However, if the DS-160 is, once the DS-160 is submitted, it stays in the system for 99 years. That's correct. You heard me correct. It stays in the US system for 99 years. If a student, once he is there, once he's done his studies, he's applying, he's done with his OPT period, he's applying for an H-1B or he's applying for a green card. If a student is doing that, his DS-160 can be looked at. Travel plans. Now, this is a very common error that students generally make when they are booking, when they're filling the DS-160 application. There's a section that states if you've made any specific travel plans. You should not mention this unless your visa is approved. You might get a rejection in your first go, you might get a second rejection, and altogether, if you mention travel plans, that might not work out for you. So it's best that you mention no in the travel plans, and you can enter a tentative date 4 to 5 days before your orientation. So if your term is starting on 17th August and your orientation is on 5th August, you could enter 1st August as the tentative start date by when you would be entering the US. There's another section where you need to mention about your relatives. This is one of the very common questions that I receive from students, that my cousin, sister, or my cousin brother, or my uncle is there in the US. Should I mention their details in the DS-160? We would not recommend you to do that. There is no way for them to track anyone except your immediate relatives who are there in the US. So why bother? Rather, we suggest you to enter details of your immediate relatives, which would only be your siblings or your parents if they're there. No one else. Length of the stay. This is another common mistake that students have done when they're submitting their DS-160. They mention the OPT period along with the duration of the program. So if you're going for a master's course and your duration is 2 years, students sometimes have mentioned 5 years. That is not correct information, and this would be used when you are going for the visa interview. So this can go negative against you. It is advisable and it is mandatory for you to show the duration of the program, which would either be 2 years, 1 year, or 4 years, depending on the program that you're applying for. Reference details. This is very important information that you're giving to them. The US consulate, they could validate the details that you've given with your referees. So choose the details that you give very carefully. The next step is booking a visa appointment. Now, I'm sure all of you are aware that you have to book 2 visa appointments, which includes the OFC and the actual interview. The OFC is, generally advised for students. Students should book the OFC just a couple of days before their actual interview, though you can even book it 3 weeks, 4 weeks before your actual interview, depending on the slots that are available. However, the major concern lies with the actual visa interview. At this time, us being in we've reached 25th May, the waiting period for booking a visa appointment in major cities is at least 30 days. So if you try to book a visa interview today, you will get the next appointment near 25th June. How can that go against you? What if you get a rejection and you're trying to book another visa appointment and there is still a waiting period of 30 days? That means you would just have one more shot because your term would practically be starting in August, So it's advisable that you book your visa early, and if you face a rejection, apply immediately. There is no constraint for anyone to wait for any particular number of days before you can book the visa appointment again. If you get a rejection, you can book the visa appointment next day. How can you do that? We would be covering that in the next few slides. There are two preferred payment modes. One is through NEFT, and we recommend that you use this method because it's not time consuming at all, and the reference number that you get, it gets activated within 24 hours. Or you could visit your nearest Axis or Citibank branch and make a direct deposit there. Remember, as far as booking the appointment is concerned, you can only reschedule your visa appointment twice. So if at all you book an appointment and you want to reschedule it, don't try to experiment. You can only do it twice. There won't be a third time. Next, we would discuss the documents which you need to carry during the visa interview and the OFC. As far as the OFC is concerned, you don't need to carry majority of your documents. The DS-160 submission confirmation, the passport, and the visa appointment letter are enough during the OFC. But as far as the visa interview is concerned, we recommend that you create 4 sets of documents. How do you plan on doing that? You should create a file and you should create 4 sets in that file. In the first set, you should carry your academic documents and standardized test scores. What all academic documents and test scores do you need to carry? It includes your passport, of course, the current passport and the previous ones if your passports are required, expired earlier. You need to carry the MRV fees receipt. You also need to carry your visa interview appointment letter along with the DS-160 confirmation slip, a service fee receipt, and some of your passport size photographs just in case. As far as the visa related documents are concerned, I'm sorry, there was a confusion here. I was talking about the visa related documents here. For your academic documents, you need to carry your class 10th and 12 documents along with your test scores, which includes your GRE, GMAT, SAT, IELTS, TOEFL, and your bachelor degree transcript and your mark sheets, of course. If you're a bachelor's student, and if in case you've done your master's also and you're going for a second master's, then you need to carry your master programs as well. For your financial documents, it is absolutely mandatory that you carry your financial documents. If at all you miss your academic documents, that still should go in favor of your case, because the visa officer would least be bothered about reviewing your application, academic related documents, if at all he has to review them. He would be more interested in reviewing your financial documents, which includes a copy of your loan approval letter, which includes a copy of your saving bank certificate, saving bank statements along with the bank letter, which showcases the funding that would be used to fund your education. And we highly recommend that you carry the bank statements for a minimum of 6 months. You could even carry for at least 3 years. That's going to work beneficial in your case, if at all you have that kind of money for the last 3 years in your account, in your sponsor's account. Fixed deposit certificates, it's applicable, though we do not recommend to use this kind of funding. Visa officer wants to be sure that you have enough liquid funding to fund your education, which is why we highly recommend that you show this funding in your savings bank account or to your loan or scholarships if they're applicable, of course. For your sponsors, you have to ensure that you carry your tax returns, and specifically for the last 3 years. And property documents, if you're planning on discussing your fixed assets or your properties during the visa interview, you need to ensure that you're carrying them. The property documents must be validated by your bank. Simply carrying your papers might not just do the trick. And finally, for those people who have work experience, we recommend that you carry your joining letter, your salary slip, along with a relieving letter. And if at all you're still working, then you just need to carry your joining letter along with your salary slips. Now, I would transfer. I would request Anamika to take over and discuss a few important points that all of you need to know for the visa process and the visa interview.
Thank you, Udit, and thank you for enlightening on the visa process. So, having covered this whole visa process and what are documents to carry, now let us briefly understand about the visa interview. That is what most of you are waiting for. Before we dig into the visa interview part, let us briefly go through what are the important facts, what most of the students are not aware about this visa interview. So on an average, the visa interview is going to be there for 2 to 3 minutes. In 95% cases, the VO never asks you for any documents to show. Some of you might be thinking that I'm going to so-and-so university, he might reject my application for visa. So for you to know that visa officer never makes a decision based on your in university. Your decision is based on what you say there in that interview. What the visa officer is looking at a screen, most of you would not be aware that he's looking at the DS-160 form. That is where Udit was talking about what common mistakes students make in the DS-160 form. So it's very important that you fill your DS-160 form very carefully. He's actually looking at his screen and going through your DS-160 form. Uh, VO does not know how many universities a student has applied to. So the most important thing to remember is that during F1 visa interview, you have to remain calm. Being well prepared is extremely important. Be sure to have all of the required documents and receipts with you or, before you go for an interview. Let us talk about how the interview is categorized. So basically, the visa interview is categorized in 5 categories. As per the interview questions they are going to ask you, we categorize them in 5 categories. First thing is your study abroad plan. So similar to your university application essays and interviews, visa officer is interested in your choice of pursuing higher education. So they're also interested in your choice of study in the USA versus your home country. Question related to this can be asked like, why are you going to your US? What will you specialize in? Why are you planning to continue your education? So similar to this question. The next category is questions about your university selection. Now, similar to your study plan, your choice of university is also important. As I said, visa interview is never based on a university selection. If 10 people are going to UTD, all of them will get the visa as long as they're able to answer well. So question related to this can be how many colleges did you apply to? How many colleges were you admitted to? How many schools rejected your application? So all of this information is important to the visa officer. Third important thing is questions about your academic capability. So in this part, you may be asked to prove your capability to succeed in a US university which you're going to study there, right? Your test scores, previous GPA can all be evaluated to determine your likelihood of success during your program. Question related to this can be what are your test scores, GRE, GMAT, SAT, TOEFL, IELTS, etc. What was your GPA in your bachelor's? Why do you want to pursue a degree in US? Why not Canada, Australia, or any other country? Third thing, now this is the most important piece of obtaining your F1 visa, which is your financial capability. Regardless of your academic qualification, you cannot be awarded an F1 student visa unless you have proven the means to finance your education. So even if student has a scholarship, I would always mention or recommend the student to mention about family funding first, then you mention about scholarship. If you have taken a loan, then loan should be talked about your funding, followed by the funding. Then you should talk about your loan. So question related to this can be, what is your sponsor annual income? How do you plan to fund your entire education? Or what do your parents do? Okay. Uh, Now the last thing again, visa officer actually wants to know what are your plan after completing your higher studies there in USA. They are very important questions, so be very well prepared for this question. You should know your short-term goal right after completing a master. What do you plan to do after completing your studies? After having certain years of experience, what is your long-term goal? What do you want to become in your life? So this is again related to do you plan to return to your home country or not? Do you have a job or career in mind after you graduate? Back to you, Udit.
Thanks, Anamika, for the insight. Right. So, without waiting further, we would talk about the questions that all of you have sent, and we would like to, we've received over 500 questions, and we've clubbed majority of the questions to, which most of you have asked, and we've segregated them into different categories. Which, and we'll start with the appointment related questions. So the first question that I would like to answer is, can I pay my visa fees without getting the I-20? Many of the students are not aware about that. But there are two types of fees that we're talking about here. One is the service fees, and two is the MRB fees, which is required for booking a visa interview. The service fees can be paid if your university where you are joining has sent you the service ID. It would not be possible for you to pay the service fees without the service ID. Now, earlier when I was talking about the service ID, I mentioned that it is something that is found in the I-20, but many at times when the university is sending you the I-20 by courier, it takes time for the courier to reach you. During transit, there might be some problem with the courier service, and in many cases, we've seen that it takes about 3 weeks to 4 weeks for the I-20 to reach the student from the university. So what should you do? You should simply ask for your service ID, and you can pay the service fees once you have that. The second is the MRP fee. An interview appointment can be booked without paying without getting the I-20. However, you must start your DS-160 form and save it. Remember, do not submit the DS-160 form because you would need details from the I-20 that you have to match and fill while you're filling the DS-160 form. So an interview appointment can be booked once you have your DS-160 application ID. The interviews are conducted by third parties. They're not done by the Department of Homeland Security. So you can book a visa appointment, and then later, once you have your I-20, you can book, you can submit the DS-160, and you can do the, you can arrange the necessary documentation. The second common question that we received from students was, how can I change the university after booking a visa appointment? This is something that I've been seeing happen of lately with a lot of students, because you might not get an admission offer from the university that you were targeting, but because of the timelines, you decided to book a visa appointment assuming that you would not get an admission offer. But once you got the offer, there was no other choice, but you want to change your visa appointment because that was the dream university where you wanted to go. So there are two steps involved here that you need to take care of. One, you need to submit a new DS-160, and when you go for the actual interview appointment, you need to carry this DS-160 for the copy of the DS-160 along with you, and show that to the visa officer, and tell him that this is what you've done. And second, you need to transfer your service fees. One of the common misconceptions that students have is that it's a transfer process is a long process. You have to first email the US visa consulate, and then you have to transfer the service ID, and they would guide you on how to do that. That's not true. You simply need to go to the same website, which is fmfje.com, and you can transfer your service ID over there. How do I reapply for the visa interview if I'm rejected once? Now, that's a tricky question. There are two options here. One is that you are going to apply for the same university where you're going, and one for the another university that you're going. And I just saw that there's a question here. Abhishek Jha is asking, if visa officer doesn't know that how many universities we have applied in, then we can easily lie all the time. Abhishek, I would not recommend that, because though the visa officer does not have any track of the number of universities that you have applied in, they could simply put your case on hold if they suspect that you are lying during the interview. Then your file would directly go to Washington, D.C., where all the details would be validated, including the answers that you've given, the universities that you've applied to, the number of rejects and admits that you have. And if the information is not matching the information that you have given, you could possibly even get a lifetime ban. You never know that. The visa would definitely get rejected, but it could lead to further complications. And we see that, I see that there are many more questions that are being posted. We'll take more questions as we move ahead. So as I was covering, how do I reapply for the visa interview if I'm rejected once? For the same university, you don't need to pay the service fees again. Please be clear on that. Many students make the mistake of paying the service fees again, which is going to incur you an additional $200. That's not a small amount. It's about 14, 15,000 rupees, you know. So we recommend that you only pay the MRV fees and you schedule a new appointment. However, as I mentioned in my previous answer, you also need to submit a new DS 160. So carry the new DS 160 during the actual interview and pay the MRV fees. For another university, how do you book an appointment? You need to submit a new DS 160 and you need to pay the MRV fees, which is $160. However, you again do not need to pay, do not need to submit the service fees again, but you simply need to transfer it. The transfer process is simple. I've already covered that. Simply go to the website, transfer, give the new service ID, and the transfer would be made. Over to you, Namika. Let's discuss the funding related questions.
All right. So now again, coming back to the most important piece, as the visa officer wants to know how are you going to fund your studies in United States. Most of the students are going to be confused about what to show, what not to show, how much to show. This remains a tricky question. So as I mentioned that always talk about your self-fundings, your parent savings first, and then talk about your education loan, and then talk about the scholarship. Now, most of the students are not aware how much you should show for the visa interview. So, as a rule, it is recommended to show the liquid funds for 1 year. This is also based as per the US law. However, it is better to show some backup for the second year as well, because the visa officer wants to know how are you going to fund your studies. So for the first year, you're sorted, but what would you do for the second year? That's more important. The next question is it mandatory to show loan letter even if your parents have more than required funds for 2 years? Now, again, one does not want to take education loan. So there is no set rule on taking education loan as long as you are able to prove that you are going fully funded and your parents have financial backing for themselves. It is not mandatory to take education loan. However, I've seen some of the students in such cases, they would like to take loan to show the responsibility to pay their tuition fee. They want to take that responsibility on their shoulder for their higher studies. Now, third question often comes, sponsor income is too low, how to tackle this? So there are less chances if you're showing less savings, your sponsor income is very low, and you are completely showing your funding through education loan. So there are less chances. Even if, I would recommend, even if the student has family saving as low, you should still talk about your family income. On the other hand, if you are showing less savings and majorly through education loan, then you should mention that your parents were more investment focused in their career. You could probably say that they invested money in property, which has doubled in the last X number of years, and you're taking loans since you want to take the responsibility on your shoulders, and once you are back, you will be repaying it. So, moving on to the rejection related questions.
Thanks, Anamika. Uh, we could discuss the next segment, which is study plan related questions. Now, these are some of these questions that I mentioned here are definitely going to be asked, during the visa interview. So the first question, the very obvious question on why are you choosing this university? What you should do here is that you should go through the website and the handbook of your university very carefully. And you have to note some of the important highlighted features. Now, if you simply say, let's assume that you're going to a top 100 business school in the US. If you say that I'm going to a top 100 business school and that's the reason for me to choose that university, it could lead you to a rejection. It is not the right answer. The visa officer wants to know the specific reasons as per your career goals, as per your profile on why you have chosen that university. For people who are applying for MS programs, you could talk about the research facility. You could talk about the faculty profile. You could talk about some of the notable alumni who have graduated from the university. For students who've done their MBAs, who are going to do their MBA, you could talk about student clubs and organizations. You could talk about the class profile and how you are a good match for the class. If you're an engineer if you're a mechanical engineer who's going for an MBA program and the class has many mechanical engineers, that could be a good highlight for you. At the end of the day, it all depends on how you are matching it with your goals and why you want to do that degree from that university. Choosing of the university should not come out like, it did not matter to you which university you got through. For example, if you applied to 5 universities, your GRE score or your GMAT score is higher than the average of the program at the university that you're applying for, you might not be able to justify it. It could simply lead to a perception that you're going to any university just to immigrate to the US. So it's very important that you answer that question very carefully on why you're choosing that university. How should you prove home ties? This is very important. The visa officer, through his or her training, is going to believe that you are a potential immigrant. You need to convince the visa officer that you are not an immigrant. How do you do that? The best way is to prove home ties. That could be done through three possible ways: social ties, economic ties, and professional goals in India. When you talk about economic ties, this is one of the best ways to establish a home tie. If your family is earning enough, you could show IT returns, savings, bonds, which you would need when you come back. Remember, the visa officer will see the family and the applicant as two different entities, so you should focus more on whatever is in your name. Also, you could mention properties, you could mention fixed assets here. These are definitely going to be establishing home ties. And the second most important thing, if at all it's applicable to you, is professional goals in India. If you as a student are seeing a potential career in India after you graduate, you are definitely in the good views as far as the visa officer is concerned. This can include a job offer with your present employer or with your past employer. For some of you who might be going for going through an employer sponsorship, it would definitely work out in your case. An employer sponsorship is nothing but some amount of money that your employer is participating while funding your education, and any other relation that you could build with your past or your present employer. Then comes, what answer should you give if asked about working on an OPT? If you simply tell that you want to do an OPT, you can mention that you want to work there. Now, this is definitely negative in the eyes of the visa officer. Anything related to working should not be mentioned. Why is that? Because the visa officer wants to confirm that you're going there only to study, not to work. However, the law understands that OPT is an integral part of the US education system, which allows students to utilize their knowledge while working. So you as a student have the advantage to mention that OPT is an integral part of your system, and I would like to take advantage of it, but this should only be done if you're asked. So what are we trying to sum up here? We're saying do not use the word working, but rather just talk about the OPT, how it's an integral part of the entire process, and how you would be utilizing that to use the knowledge that you've learned in your academics and use that when you come back to your home country, especially for people who are going for technology courses. You could pretty much validate that you're going to use that technology in what you've learned in the classroom, utilize that through your OPT, learn how to implement it, and utilize that when you come back to India. And of course, if CPT is a part of your curriculum, it should definitely be mentioned. We'll just take a pause here and we'll look at some of the questions that are coming.
All right. I think the first question is related to the funding part. My parents are retired, but saving is double than my I-20 amount. I am not taking any education. I think we have covered this in the funding part, that as long as you're able to prove that your parents are fully funded and sorry, they have financial backing for themselves, and they are getting pension or they're retired, they would be able to take care of their living expenses here in India, even if they are putting a lot of their investment in your higher education. It's not a problem. It's not required you take education loan. I have a problem of stammering, so I want to know whether it would be a problem during visa interview. Should I mention them in beginning itself? Yes, you can mention that in the beginning itself. It's okay to tell that, and the visa officer would not mind. The next question is, I'm supposed to get new I-20 till 30th May approximately. Is that fine if I pay service ID after that day? Because his visa interview is on 6th of June. So I would recommend you to pay your service ID before you appear for your visa interview date. And I believe that service ID is the same ID you submitted in your DS-160 form. If it is not, then you will have to submit your DS-160 again with the new service ID. Next question, can liquid funds be shown as educational loan in case of aspiring artists preparing for scholarship? I think the question is not clear. Udit, do you understand this?
Not really, Anamika, and due to the time constraint, we'll cover some of the other common questions that were asked by students, and we'll get back to the questions that are being asked in the live chat.
All right.
So, we've already discussed on, as far as the study plan related questions are concerned, why will why have you chosen that university? We've talked about home test, we've talked about the OPT. Another student had asked us on what to do, what do you plan to do after your studies? Now, again, as I've mentioned, the law understands that OPT is an integral part of the US education system. You can simply mention here that the OPT is an integral part and I would like to take advantage of it. As I mentioned before, this should only be done if asked, and clearly please do not mention if you want to work in the US, even if you have an intention to do that. It would go negative against you. It would lead to a perception that you are a potential immigrant and you will face a rejection. Do backlogs matter during the visa interview? Yes, they do. It depends. How, if you have some backlogs, you have to be confident to mention them. Do not hesitate. You just have 3, 4 backlogs. The visa officer understands that due to unforeseen circumstances, a student can fail in some subjects in their undergraduation. So be confident. Tell them the reason that, yeah, these were the backlogs that I had, and it didn't take me much time and I cleared them in the next semester. But if you have too many backlogs, and there are many students who apply to universities with 20 plus backlogs, it could go negative against your case. I'm not denying the fact that there are students who've received a visa approval with 25 backlogs also, but those students might have not been asked the question, or they would have covered it up well during the visa interview. So the best way to go if you have too many backlogs is to be honest about it. If you lie about your backlogs, the visa officer can simply verify this by having a look at your mark sheets. Though in 95% of the cases, the visa officer does not look at the documents, they have been trained to suspect students who are lying during the visa interview. If you lie, it won't take them more than a minute to get to know that you're lying, and they could verify with your mark sheets. And if they see too many backlogs, they would enter that in the system that the student was not being honest about the backlogs, and that could keep on leading to you getting a rejection again and again and again, because the next time when you go for an interview, the next visa officer would look at the previous visa officer's comments, and that could go negative against you. How to justify changing of streams? For instance, I'm a mechanical engineer and I want to go for a computer science program. What do I say? That's again a very tricky question, because if you have no backing, if you have no, if you have not backed up, if you don't have a backup with relevant data, this could go negative against you. For example, do you have relevant experience in the field of computer science? After you did your mechanical engineering, did you work in the computer science field? That's very important, because if you did, you have relevant backup to prove that the master's in computer science program that you're going to do is relevant for you? Have you pursued relevant courses or certifications? Even if you don't have work experience, if you're a fresher, after your mechanical engineering, have you done relevant certification? Someone is going for a master's in cybersecurity program, or someone is going for a computer science program and wants to specialize in cybersecurity, you could do some certification programs that could be 3 months or 6 months in duration, and you could talk about them during the visa interview. This gives a crux. This gives the visa officer a sense that you know what you're talking about. You're not simply going to the US just for the sake of it, and this is matching with what you want to do in your career. Finally, if none of this is applicable, do not mention that you have pursued a different degree in your undergraduation due to parental or peer pressure. This will definitely go negative against you. The visa officer might think that if you did your undergraduation due to parental pressure, what's the guarantee that you're not doing your masters right now because of that, and you're simply going to the US because it's an emerging field over there? It really depends. Just simply try to make the visa officer understand your career goals and how your masters in the new field will help you in achieving your goals. We'll talk about, many cases, many students receive rejections during their first, visa attempt. We'll talk about some of the rejection related questions, and then we'll take up some questions coming in the live feed. Over to you, Namika.
All right. So moving on to the rejection related questions. Now, I know most of you are scared if we get a rejection, what will happen next? I believe we are also conducting this session to eliminate that fear in your mind that if you're well prepared, rejection should not come. So, what are the common reasons and why do you get rejection? We have already covered that. Question we got from one of the student is, when rejected without a reason, what would be the most probable reason uh, as to why a candidate gets rejected? So now, as per our understanding, there are two possible reasons. One is that the student was not able to show home ties to his country. It's very important that you show your home ties, that you will return back to India. Second is that the student was not able to prove his financial status, that his parents are financially sound here in India, or to fund his studies. So that these two are the most important questions and common reason of rejections. Second is the question is, what are the visa rejection chances if I only have one admit? So in the eyes of visa officer, when you purchase a phone, you have two three options. And when you are going for your university higher education in USA, which is a huge investment, how is it possible that you apply to just one university? But even if you have one admit, chances should be fine as long as you're able to justify why that university. Third question, visa rejected once or multiple times, what changes has the student made? Now, this is again very tricky question. What should you say? What should you not say? Now, student can play around the documents he has changed. Student can say that I was not carrying financial papers previously, and now I'm carrying some additional documents. So this is how you can plan to answer this question. Fourth question, visa rejected more than thrice. Should you apply again? I would say yes. You should not give up, but you should try to improve what went wrong in the last interview, what you could actually improve. How can you do that? So you can apply as many times as you want. And I have seen many students getting their visa approval even on their seventh and eighth attempt. I know this is surprising, but trust me, this has happened in some of the student cases. I would like to take one question here. I had one visa rejection last year for business class visa. Will it also affect me as I'm trying for F1? They did not give any reason for rejection. How to prepare for this? Now, this denial will most likely affect a new F1 application, probably because you were not able to show your home ties that you are going to come back to India. Because as in even in every interview, you're required to prove that you are coming back to India. So if you were previously denied, it means that you were not able to previously prove that you are coming back to India at the term's end. So unless your situation has changed and or you are able to prove strong ties again, it can still happen that your visa shall approved.
All right, we have some more questions also. Deepika is asking, while sending documents for I-20, I have sent documents of my mother as my sponsor. I hadn't mentioned my father anyway, so will there be any discrepancy if I carry financial documents at the visa interview? That's a good question, Deepika. For the I-20, whatever documentation you are showing, it has got nothing to do with the funding that you will be showing during the visa interview. So as long as you have the necessary documentation that your father is going to fund you, you could talk about that during the visa interview. Why am I focusing on necessary documentation? Because the visa officer might ask you for your documents.
There is one more question. I got the single admit only, and it's my dream university. So I'm going with it. Will it affect the interview? How to convince them for this? Again, you must have applied to 5 to 6 universities. Now, even if you have just one admit and that too is your dream university, it is okay to go ahead with that. You would be required to prove that why that single university, even if you had got some other admits, still the university which you had chosen to apply and go ahead with your visa would remain same. So you will again have to talk about the curriculum. Why are you going to that university and how are you going to achieve your long-term goals by enrolling in this particular university? Do we have more questions?
Radhika, I'll request you to type in your question again. We've not received your question, and we'll request you to do that as early as possible because we're closing the session in another 5 minutes. All right, so the next question is from Siddesh. He's asking, while carrying GRE scorecard, we have to take all 3 pages of the score sheet, right? The pages already show the number of universities the scores are sent to. Yeah, you could do that. As I mentioned, your documents would not be reviewed, but if you're carrying your scorecard, you have to carry all the documents, all the pages. Tanuj is asking about the funding scenario. If I have an education loan covering entire education cost, how much savings do I need to show for visa along with loan if my I-20 requires $45,000? Anamika, would you like to answer that?
Can you repeat the question? I can't see that here.
Tanuj is asking if he has education loan which is funding his entire cost, how much funding should he show in his savings if the cost of education is $45,000?
Okay, and he's taking complete loan.
Yes, he's taking complete loan. That's what he's mentioned.
So there should be a balance between your savings and your education loan. As I mentioned, if you are completely going to fund your studies through your education loan, you can probably say that your parents have some property, some fixed assets here, which can be liquidated at any point of time. Now, about the savings, how much you can show, that depends on your capacity. If your parents have all their savings in fixed assets, then you can probably show that same that you're majorly funding through your education loan, and you can get that liquidated because your parents have invested all that money in terms of properties.
Anamika, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're not able to hear you. Your voice broke in between.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So should I repeat my answer?
Yeah, we lost you in between.
All right, all right. So the student question is that he is majorly funding through his education loan, right? And he wants to know whether he should show some savings or not. Is that the question?
That's correct.
All right. So, as I mentioned and covered in funding related questions, that it is important that you show some personal savings of your parents. There should be a balance between your parent savings and your education loan. If you are not able to show some savings, then probably you can say that you are going to fund your studies through education loan, which is sanctioned for so and so amount. But your parents, they were more focused in their career. They saved on all of their savings in the form of fixed assets, which can be liquidated at any point of time if you want to get that, if you need them on an urgent basis.
All right. We have a very good question from. Ramika, we've lost you again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, but we'll move on to the next question. We've got a good question from Hirsch. He's saying, can I show 2 years of funds via mutual funds and only 50% of the tuition fee of first year as funds in liquid? So I would like to highlight here that for the visa interview, it is mandatory for everyone to show only first year tuition and living expenses. The second year tuition and living are not required but highly recommended. So to answer your question, if you have funding for your first year through your savings account through liquid funds, you are in a good position. You could tell the visa officer that you have mutual funds for your second year, which could be liquidated at any point of time depending on the need and availability. Right. So, though we understand that all of you have many more questions, due to the time constraint, we would like to close the session over here, and we would be doing another session sometime soon in the next couple of weeks. We'll keep all of you posted. You would receive notifications from us. Please send in your email on our website, or you could reach out to me or Anamika directly. I'll speak out slowly. You could send me an email on udit.narang, that's udit.narang@shiksha.com, or you could reach out to Anamika Saxena. Her email ID is anamika.saxena@shiksha.com. That's anamika.saxena@shiksha.com. We also have additional resources available for everyone's convenience. We've given a link in our presentation, which includes the US student visa guide. So you could see that on your screen. That is the link. We'll also give the link in the comment section. You need to visit this link and download the visa guide. It will give you a step-by-step process on how to book your visa appointment and would give you some insight to the visa interview also. For a personalized counseling service, visit our homepage, which is studyabroad.shiksha.com/apply. Give your details. One of our counselors would be getting in touch with you shortly. And as I mentioned before, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Anamika directly. We would be happy to help you. All the best to everyone for your visa interview. Do well. Make sure that you cover up 4 important points during the visa interview, which includes why that university, why have you chosen that specific course, why have you chosen USA to do your studies, and of course, establishing home ties. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much and wish you all the best.